If I'm having fun, I'm learning, and I'm helping people, I define that as a success.
I'm your host, Shah Hurley. Each week, I invite a conscious leader in tech, sales, and beyond to share their inner journey, how they overcome obstacles, how they achieve success while staying true to themselves, and above all, what makes them human beings. I hope those authentic conversations serve as an inspiration for you as you continue your own inner journey of self-discovery, healing, and mastery. Hi, Josue. Well, welcome to the show. Before I dive right in, I know we're going to talk about careers and whether we want to stay in tech and sales or leave. And it's a hard decision, especially right now. Like a lot of tech companies are laying off people. And maybe we'll have you to introduce yourself, like introduce your journey a little bit more, like, how you started at Google as a people manager, transition to AWS. And then I'll have you introduce yourself and we'll dive right in.
No, for sure. Thank you, Shah. Thank you for having me here. Thank you all for listening. So my journey as a people manager didn't start at Google. I was working for a company known as EMC Square, which was acquired by Dell. I started in 2006 as an individual contributor at EMC. And maybe in 2011 or something is when I became a people manager. It was great experience, but my management skills changed when I was at Google. So at EMC, it was pretty much like grinding, trying to close deals. I was pretty much more like an elevated rep. I was doing the same things as my reps were doing, but just with a team that was under me. Nothing changed. I didn't have a lot of instruction. I was pretty much learning on the go. Then in 2012, I moved to Google, but back to an individual contributor role. Back in the day, I was the second hire for the SaaS platform. There was no Google Cloud back at that date. We were selling our workspaces, the collaboration suite that's currently known as Workspaces. It was my manager and me. That's it. We were the only two sellers at Google. I was pretty much in charge of everything. I was wearing multiple hats. I did that for almost 2 years before moving to the US. By the way, I'm from Mexico. That my experience, I'm telling you, was in Mexico City. But I moved to the US in 2014 to lead the small business, all countries, Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking countries. That's when I really started to become a manager. And I remember when I first started my journey as a manager that the first blockers or the first awakening for me was when my director at that time, Jean David, she mentioned to me that I was doing a disservice to my team and to myself by being an elevated IC, that I have a different role and I have to actually coach the team, do a lot of pre-briefs and debriefs, and doing the calls, just be an asset instead of taking over conversations or trying to sell or doing a lot of the things I was used to do. So I started to take a step back and just learn from the experience, coach the team, see what things they were doing right, the things that they were not doing right, have a lot of like conversations, dialogues, just trying to understand how can I add value. I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years. Then I went back to individual contributor at Google, but now with GCP. So I moved from being a manager at these workspaces to becoming an individual contributor at GCP. I did that for maybe a few months and then I went back to leadership. But now with something that I knew how to do it, at least I think I knew how to do it. I had the opportunity of meeting a lot of different mentors, a lot of different managers, a lot of different people who helped me and coached me to become a better leader. I think that when time progresses, when I have more opportunities to lead people, I became better. So I did that for many years. Actually, before moving to AWS, I was a leader of leaders. I have managers and individual contributors in my organization. And when I moved to AWS, I went back to just first-line manager. I did that for strategic accounts, and maybe throughout our conversation, I can explain a little bit more my rationale of why I make some of these decisions. But I did that for 3.5 years, and now from maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm a leadership role here at Databricks. That's pretty much for my journey. I did a lot of IC and management and leader of leaders and back and forth for multiple reasons. I don't see this as something that you have to continue just progressing and getting more people under you. I think that there's different things that you should be thinking of how you grow. And for me, it's not just about like growing in terms of how many people you have in the organization, but the skills that you want to develop.
Well, what a journey. It's like the decision you made. It sounds so different from most people who would make, like, most people, or like the people I knew, would just climb the ladder, right? Like I see people manager, director, VP, and then you kind of climb right there. And some of the people I know would started to question, right? Am I doing the right thing? And every time when I chat with you, I do know that every single decision you make was so intentional. You mentioned about the skill sets. So like, would love to know more about how do you know that's a skill set you want to develop the next? Or maybe before that, what's your definition of success? I know a few people might not even agree to the kind of traditional way of defining of success, right? It's not like everyone want to become a billionaire or a millionaire or own a big house and car. So I'm curious, what's your definition of success, and how did you get to the point to feel confident and comfortable? This is how I define success.
No, for sure. And I think that first and foremost, there's not a single definition of success. I think it's like everything in life is individual. It's unique to the individual. I think that my conversations with people when I'm coaching them or I'm just having the casual conversations, whatever, it's like, hey, don't see yourself reflected in other people's journey. You have your own ambitions, your own aspirations, and will be successful yourself. So for me, it was also a journey. I mean, I had gone through different iterations in my life about what success looks like. And I think that every single time, or it's just a transition. I think that I have been evolving, I have been changing, and most likely in the future, it will continue to evolve and change, and a continuous evolution of what I feel as a success. The way I came to my current definition of success is by identifying 3 pillars that for me are important. The first one is I always like to be learning. I observed that the times that I made a decision to make a move was when I feel like I was capped at my learnings. I mean, you never stop learning. That's impossible. But I think that they became a little bit more marginal. It wasn't as accelerated as they were before, so it was very marginal. So I decided that I was not having fun anymore, which is the second pillar. I want to be in an environment that I'm having fun. And for me, having fun is not just laughs and just playful. It's actually being challenged, being stretched, having a purpose and having meaningful work. That's how I define happiness, and that's how I define having fun. And the other one, I want to be in a position that I can actually help people. I think that's the reason I become a salesperson. I like solving customer challenges. And then I evolved to become a people manager because I like helping people develop their skills and develop their growth and aspirations of what they want to achieve. That gives me joy. I really like when I can help people. Sometimes people don't like to be helped. Sometimes they just want to be listened to. But I really like I'm a problem solver. I like to come and help people. So for me, a definition of success is if I can meet these 3 criteria. If I'm having fun, I'm learning, and I'm helping people, I define that as a success.
First of all, I love how you're saying, be open-minded, to have a growth mindset, right? The definition I have for success right now might not be the same 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Just keep exploring and keep kind of going inside of ourselves and then asking the right question and allow ourselves to kind of step into a different definition of success when the time comes, right? And another thing, I have so many questions. And one of the questions was, sometimes the people would think, once I change the external environment, meaning change to a different team or change to a different company, and I'll be happier or I'll have more fun, your definition, which is to do meaningful work. And we all know that, there's different kind of components, right? There's external components. There's also internal components. I know people who are miserable in California and can also feel miserable in New York, where the external environment can change, but after you kind of pass the honeymoon phase, and you might go back to where you feel the same. So I wanted to kind of understand your take on that, because you actually went through different transitions. Culture and Google, Amazon, Databricks, I'm assuming they're different, right? So how did you kind of take whatever is external and whatever is internal and then kind of make sure you feel this is the right place for me, at least for a while? Because partly we don't want to jump around, right? Hey, I'm not happy and then I'm going to jump to a different company.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that the first thing I realized throughout all these experiences is that the grass is never greener. It doesn't matter where you go. There will always be challenges. There's always be things that are not as good as you think they are. But there are also good things. And I think that always trying to see the positive things on any situation, I think that helps a lot. That's number one. Two, I think that with all these changes, you have it's like a funnel. you have like the overarching culture or the overarching like way of doing things, and then you drill down to maybe from the company to your department to your group and then to your manager. So I think that the closer these cultures to you, the most important. Because to your point, you can be working in a great company in a not so great team and you will not be happy. Or you can be in a company that's not that great, but with a great team and you'll have the time of your life. So I think that you have to be very conscious of the people you will be working with. Not just because of your interactions with people, but what you're expecting to learn from them. So maybe they can give you some of the things that you're looking for and that you will be excited and you'll be like being engaged. And if not, it's better to do the assessment before that. So going into different environments, you manage to take the best out of it. That's the way I approach it. I think that, yeah, to your point, there's going to be opportunities where you see that what's best for you. And I think that's where you have to do this pre-assessment of what you're looking for. But I think that the most important like piece of advice is that don't expect that if you move to somewhere, everything will be great. At the end, you will go back to the mean and everything will be table stakes. And then you'll have the option of taking what's best for you or not. As I mentioned, the grass is never greener. The grass is greener where you actually put water. So it's your responsibility.
Ultimately, the decision which patch of grass you want to water and then go all in with that. Because I think where the suffering and miserable situation that people got themselves in is they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? Like they're thinking they wanted to get the grass greener on their own wherever they're in, but they're like also looking at some other grass. And so their energy is kind of divided in a way. How did you get to a place where you're just like, yeah, I know that's a patch of grass I wanted to water. I'm going 100%. I'm going all in. Like, how did you get to that point? Because I know that's a struggle for a lot of people now, especially the tech layoff is going on right now. People are thinking, hey, the culture is changing. Like even at Google, right? Culture is so different compared to years ago. And then there are people who are considering leaving the company for the culture and then joining another company, but like, hey, layoff is going on everywhere, right? The culture might be changing everywhere. So how did you get to a place where you're like, I know this is where I wanted to be. This is a patch of grass I wanted to water, at least for the next few years.
I think that it comes back to my pillars. When I feel like I can actually fulfill those three things, I feel more engaged and willing to spend more time trying to pursue whatever's in that path. I think that it also comes to a lot of being intentional and doing my due diligence about talking to a lot of people, talking of different experiences. I think that having more data points is important because I think that sometimes we're very narrow vision in terms of what I perceive and I get biased because that's my only perception. I think that having the opportunity of talking to different people, I know it's difficult because there's not a lot of people that are willing to share and also be transparent with what's their experiences. But if you manage to have that, to manage to have those, like the pros and the cons, like everything has these two sides. And just have the balance of what makes sense to you. You will have the same data set for you and for me, but maybe we'll have different approaches to what we want to achieve. Maybe for you will be something that you'll be willing to spend time, and maybe for me it's not, and that's totally fine. So you have to have a clear definition, or your criteria has to be clear. So whenever you're assessing whatever opportunity, you use that criteria to actually see if it makes sense for you, which is the only person that actually has to make sense for. So that's the other thing that has been like maybe in the last 3 years that I've come to like an aha moment. Like it doesn't matter what I think, it's what matters to the person. That person has, maybe no one shares 100% everything with everyone, not even your partner or your parents or your kids. So it doesn't matter. The only person who knows almost everything about yourself is yourself. And I said almost because sometimes you also have your own like blind spots, but whatever makes sense for you, it's fine. People don't need to agree with what you decide because at the end, you're the one living with your life.
That's true. Because like, even doesn't matter if you have a family, you have a partner, you have parents, and eventually we are living our own life, right? Like the mental health, whatever, it's in our own head. And it's like, we always say that we come to the world by ourselves and we're going to live by ourselves. And then on a journey, we're going to share some of the moments with the people we share moments with, which are sometimes friends, sometimes colleagues, and that's where we can be intentional which
Yeah,
circle.
but you don't have to be on like selfish and say just thinking about yourself. But I think that what I'm trying to say is that at the end, you have to make your own decisions based on what you want to do, not what you think that people will like you to do.
Yeah, that's the kind of discernment too. Because I remember when you left Google, and then in my head, I was like, wow, Josue was, a people manager, and now he's going to become an individual contributor. And that requires a lot of work. When I say work, that means letting go of the ego, right? Because you could stay on Google and then climb the ladder, get promo and then become a director and go continue the journey there. That could be a path. But you decided to leave. And I remember the conversation we had, you were just like so sure about the path you took on. And that was the moment, and I'm like, well, I needed to understand your inner journey, how you get to where you are today. But it all makes sense. It's like the kind of discernment you have within you. I'm curious, when you see, it is so interesting, because you see helping people as a manager, helping people as a salesperson, and now you're talking about it's all about what the other person wants. But when we want to help people, like, inevitably we wanted to influence that person, right? Like, how do you balance that? Like your own belief system, your own thoughts, your own way of making decisions, and trusting that person to make the decision that's right for that person. Like, how did you, I guess, as a manager, as a person, how did you do that?
I don't know. I think that there's no right answer. I think that I come from a place where I trust everyone, and it's on them to lose my trust. I think there's too much effort to actually work on building trust that I'd rather give it and then see how it goes. Of course, it doesn't work all the time, and sometimes I regret doing it, but I think that it has more benefits than downside, so I'll continue to do that. That's the first point. The second one, I actually come from like working backwards from what they want. So I ask a lot of questions. I try to understand where they're coming from, what they want to achieve, and keep peeling the onion, because at the beginning, the first conversations are very shallow or superficial, and you want to keep digging, keep asking questions until you really understand what's their motivation. Sometimes they don't even know. So it's hard for them to understand. And specifically as a people manager, people reporting to me, I'm always super transparent with them, like, hey, nothing is permanent. You will leave or I will leave. And actually my expectation is that in the future, none of us will be working here. People have other aspirations and people will move on. In the meantime, let's work together to a common goal, which is the company's goal and our goal. But also in parallel, we can work in your goals. And that can be anything. It can be getting promoted. It can be maybe moving to a different team. It can be getting to business school. It can actually be going and working for a competitor. It's fine. I actually believe that being not permanent, in the future, we might be working together in wherever they go, or in a different team, or just my network will expand. So I understand that everyone will move on, and I would like them to be part of that journey and help them move to that direction. But in the meantime, we can actually make an agreement of, hey, we're going to work together to make this a successful experience for both in terms of our current responsibilities, which is our job. And I think that helps them a lot. I think some people sometimes are a little unsure to trust me because it's not common. I always tell, hey, I know all these people that have reported to me, go and talk to them. So you know how, it's more like a referral, like go and see how I am. Maybe I'm a good fit for you, maybe not, but you can talk to someone that's not me. And of course, I'm biased about myself. So talk to other people and their experiences.
I love that. And it's funny that you're saying you're biased by yourself, but you're one of the person I know, you're so authentic and so self-aware, like what's going on, what's in your mind, and you're always so open. I think it's just being open and authentic that helps to build a trust with the people. And then also, like, it's interesting you're talking about the trust between people manager and the individual contributor, because I literally, before we jump on the call, we're just talking about how sometimes people manager would just like sugarcoat things, say things to the individual contributor so they get the certain stuff done. And then as an individual contributor, they might feel like, do you think I'm stupid, right? The work is not important. You're telling me this is number one priority, and yeah, I'm going to get it done. But that's when the trust get kind of violated, right? Like it's something I don't know why. It's like, I've seen so many managers done that. I wanted to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you assign something to a team member, and then this is not like a number one priority, and then that person might be still just the right person for the project, or the person could be just motivated. You know that this person's gonna get it done, right? Like, how do you make sure the communication is done in such a delicate way that you're building trust, but also making the person feel like that person is valued?
I think that it comes to expectations. I mean, the first time I met the team, I'm always very upfront with what's my expectations about our work. And one of the things I shared with them always is that I have a saying when I was younger. My mom always says, you have to eat your vegetables, right? Like, maybe you don't like them, but it's good for you. So I tell them the same, hey, there's things that maybe I disagree with, but I'm getting that like tops down. And they say, this is the things that we have to do. I'll be transparent with you. And sometimes we just have to do it because we have to do it. So there's no, I mean, I wouldn't want to argue about it because you can push back, but we still have to do it. So it's better for me to be upfront and say, hey, this is something that we have to do. It's something that's just being pushed to us, and someone has to do it, and you'll have to do it. And I think that transparency and just being so open and say, hey, maybe this is something that I also disagree that we have to do it, but we have to do it. And I think that people appreciate when you're super open, transparent, like, hey, we all have to have a job, and in our job description or our job functions, not everything will be fun. There's things that we have to do because we are told to do it. Right. And there's mechanisms and things that you can do to push back, like maybe this is not maybe too time consuming, or it doesn't provide a lot of value, or a lot of the things that you can actually come back. But there are things that you still have to do it. So it's better to tell them like, hey, this is just something that we have been told to do it, and let's do it. Let's just get it out of the way, and then we can continue with things that actually add value.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the kind of like fundamental level of respect you can have for someone, and that builds trust, right? Because if you are thinking, I can just sugarcoat certain things to get that people do it, and which is, to me, it's really manipulative, right? Like, I can kind of, it's like, you buy this cheap gift and then you wrap it with like fancy wrappers, and you're like, hey, I get you this like very great gift, and that person opening it up is like, yes, not that great. And it's actually better, if you really want to build a trust, to be honest and transparent about what needs to be done. And I remember when you connected before and you mentioned about, the culture, like, we're not a family at work, in the corporate world, we're actually a team. Would you want to just hear more about that? I think that's fascinating.
That's been things I've been thinking when there's a lot of companies that they wave the flag of we're family, I'll always have your back. We have seen that hasn't happened. Like, if they need to make a hard decision, they will make a hard decision.
Like Google.
Like pretty much all the companies in the world, right? And that's fine. I think that one of the things that people feel disappointed is because they got the impression that will never happen because they were family, and you'll never kick someone out of your family, right? Or at least not a lot. So what I think is the way that companies should approach it and employees should approach this relationship is more like a sports team. So my analogy was like, sports teams are always trying to find the best players and pay them the least amount of money that they can, just to optimize their investments. In the other hand, team players or people that play for that sport, they always want to play for the best team and get the most, like the biggest contract. It's just like that, and that's something that are not aligned, right? They're actually headbutting each other. But in the meantime, companies will always be trying to find the best players, and you will try to be in the best. At that certain moment of time is what I was telling you. We will be working together because you are the best team I can gather, and this is the best team I can actually play for. And this relation will stay this relationship until someone finds someone better. I know super cutthroat, super hardcore, but that's reality. It's a business, and companies will make business decisions, and if those business decisions don't include you, they won't include you. And for the employees, if they really want to do something that is not aligned to the company because they want to progress a different career, they want to move to a different location, they want to whatever, they will do it. Okay. So I think that the disconnection is when people think that it's like a marriage, like it's forever.
Right.
It's not. It's just temporarily, and they will work together until they have to part away.
Right. I think that's a lot of us were delusional in a way, right? Like, think if we got into this top tech company, and then if I do a great job and I get promotion and consistently and I perform well, then I'll stay here forever. And which is really an illusion that we create in our mind. And also that does not really help us to grow, right? Just thinking about the decision you make in transitioning out of different companies, it's because the skill sets you wanted to learn was not available to you at that previous company. So you decided to move on. That's super intentional. And it's so interesting too, thinking about this, the team, the sports team kind of analogy to family, because I remember when I was in Google, I do feel like I was part of a bigger family. I do feel like in a certain period of time, I feel like a strong sense of belonging. So when the layoff happened, it's almost like, oh, shoot, I got locked out of my family and then I needed to work on that. And now I'm actually being invited back to Google to do some of the well-being retreats or like workshops to help people get more engaged. And a lot of concerns coming from the people manager is, my people are not working. My people are just not showing up to work. And I care for them. I want them to feel well. What do we do now? And then that's where I think the disconnection between, hey, this is actually a business right here as a co-creation kind of relationship to do whatever is good for Google, but also for ourselves, but not just thinking, hey, we're just a family and try to be nice to each other. We're
No, for sure. And I'm not saying I feel disconnected with my team. I actually feel super engaged. It also removes being complacent. I think that a certain degree, if you believe that you're part of a family, nothing will happen to you, you don't put all your effort. I think that going back to the sports analogy, I should always be training to be better. I should always be doing things to improve myself. Right. And I think the same with the companies. You're always trying to find the best facilities or the best things for people to stay, or the athletes to stay engaged. It's more about removing the being complacent of both ends and taking you for granted. It's hey, I'll do my best effort for you to stay here, and me, I'll do my best effort to stay here. And to your point, sometimes those things don't meet. But you're not I feel disengaged. I'm a mercenary. I'll always be trying to find the best new thing. It's not. It's more about giving your all in trying to be your best, because you always have to be your best so you can stay employed. Company is the same. They have to offer you the best things for you to stay there, like the best compensation packages and everything, because if not, you will move on. So it's giving our best to keep the other party engaged.
It's hey, let's just be honest, be transparent with each other, and let's just see the reality as it is, and grow as the best we could and do the best for the company and ourselves. And if we could create a harmonious or whatever culture and company that's on top of that, right? With the foundation of we trust each other, we can be transparent with each other. I think it's also super important to communicate in a way that's so aligned with whatever reality the company is providing, because it doesn't help if the company is really laying off people, and then on the other hand, it's communicate to the employee and hey, everyone, you should just feel okay. We're doing well, and it just doesn't really create the trust, which is super important. In terms of talking about earlier, whether you wanted to increase the retention rate or not, but end of the day, I think in years we all have free will. If this company does not.
I mean, that's a contract that we sign, right? It's right? Always free will. Mm-hmm. So everyone's here because they want to be here, both companies and employees. So let's just put our best effort to stay here because we want to be here.
Right. I agree. I do think a good gift that anyone can give to people who are struggling or suffering in a way, especially in this kind of situation, right? Do I stay? Is sales for me? Should I stay in this company or should I leave for another company? What if another company is worse? What if this and that? I think a lot of us stuck in this what if, and we live in the future. But they say that, when you're not making a decision, you already made a decision by staying. And that causes a lot of anxiety and depression. I think one thing I would love to at least get people to one step, further is to get a little bit more clarity and go inside. And so you can get clear on whether you want to stay or not. And then you go all in with whatever decisions you make. So what is one question you would want to offer to people to think or contemplate on, just to get a little bit more clear on whatever decision they wanted to make at this moment? We're not talking about 3 years from now or 5 years, just right now.
No, I think that what you were saying is spot on. I think that there's always risk. There's risk of moving. There's risk of staying. So what you have to make sure is what's the thing that will give you less regrets. So if you're just that when you should leave or you should stay. Assume both scenarios and just play it through. Think what's going to happen if you choose one over the other, and which one is the one that will give you less regrets. Like if you go and fail, will you regret that, or you will regret staying and not going towards your whatever dream job or whatever you were thinking? I think it's hard because you always second guess yourself, especially in this economy where pretty much everything's just crazy. But I think that in order to win, you have to take risks. They just have to be educated risks that you actually assess the situation and try to figure out how to mitigate that risk. But at the end, it's going to be a risk. And also in terms of the ROI, the return, if you really will regret it if you don't do something. And sometimes the answer is, I have to stay because the risk is too high. And actually I like what I'm doing, and maybe it's just situational and there will be more opportunities in the future. And sometimes I have to go and do it because this environment is too toxic, or I'm not growing, or because I really like it. Even if it lasts for a few months, this is something I really want to try.
Yeah, I think we're
there's always going back, right? I mean, I'm not saying that maybe today is hard because there's not a lot of opportunities, but there's always another opportunity. You need to struggle and the challenge to actually grow. Yeah. There's no growth without friction.
Right. Otherwise, we feel just so comfortable. I don't know if you heard about the story about when they boil the frog is so comfortable in the pot, like, and then ended up dying there. That's a situation I always wanted to kind of share. And yeah, like the water is boiling, you feel the temperature going up, but and then you're like, I want to jump out, but it's so comfortable. And yeah, like, would you regret, yeah, it takes effort to jump out of the pot. And I love the way how you're talking about this is where I'm like saying, yeah, this is a whole suite combining the heart and mind, because if we get stuck in the mind, right, it's just overanalyze a lot of things. But like then asking ourselves, are we going to regret if we don't make the decision, if we don't leave, or if we stay? Last question, I always ask this. I'm just curious. This is kind of selfish question because I'm just purely so curious about this. What do you think makes us human being? Or if you just want to speak on behalf of yourself, what makes you a human being?
I think it's the ability to express feelings and feel things. I think that being a human, it's just to your point about being like rational and being that intentional, I think that's kind of being a human being because that's in the mind, but I think that it goes deeper to the heart when you can actually feel things. I think that if you just analyze data, I mean, maybe a machine can do it. I think it's having that heart when you can actually interpret the data and you can make decisions and you can do things that maybe a model cannot do for you. Something that you have to have a feeling. And also you have to have the empathy, and data is not empathic with anyone. So as a human, having that empathy and understanding that there's different situations, different people, different approaches, different backgrounds, I think that's something that gives you that flexibility and that opportunity of being more human. So yeah, being rational is important. That's like thinking is a human attribute, but I think that that's something that maybe the machines have already been doing it better than us. But going back to the heart, to the human, that for me, that's the human side, that you can actually use the feelings to use that data in the right way.
Yeah, that's where we build authentic connections. Because I think the reason why I'm so curious about this is because nowadays a lot of people are talking about, hey, 10 years from now, my job is going to be replaced by AI. And then a lot of people live in fear and feel like everything's just so hopeless. But I do wanted to just get different people's voices, just to have people to see different perspectives, and we're maybe dive a little bit deeper into ourselves and the ability to feel and, like the ability to connect with us, like this kind of conversation, right? Like it's different than the chatbot, AI to AI or human being.
But yeah, this technology is great. And like all technologies before this one, it can be used for the good and for the bad.
Yes.
All of them. And every single time, if you just see your history books, we were having the same conversations. We were saying like, this new technology will be the human doomsday. And it hasn't. We just continue to evolve. We just continue to adapt, and there will be new things. And it's how you use it. And again, I believe that there's a lot of room for good things with this technology, but there will be people that will use it for evil, and that will just be the way that things happen, and they will continue to do it. It's not just for this technology or for this thing, it's for everything. So I will always take the good over the bad, and I think this is great for the human mankind. I think there's a lot of things that this new technology can do for us, and I'll always try to focus on the good things than the things that definitely some rotten apples will do with this technology.
Yeah, be conscious, be intentional, whatever industry we're in, just focus on the good things and bringing good to humanity, right? Like, to me, it's really the war between, I call this spiritual war. Whether we want to take actions or communicate out of fear or scarcity or greed, hatred, war, we want it to come from our heart center, which is like love, hope, and light. And I do hope we all kind of focus on the bright side. But again, I can't really control everyone, but I do want to kind of share voices like this or conversation like this. And then you hope that people work and then kind of start to rethink about how the way how they connect with each other and how they make decisions. Because everything, I think it's collective, right? We all feel each other's energy and how people communicate with each other. So, well, I can talk to you forever, Josue, but I think our time is up. But we can always continue the conversation. One thing you said to me is our connection is there. We don't have to work in the same company to keep the connection going. And I hope that will be a guiding light for people who value connection so much and the fear of leaving the company because of the connection. But I think if you connect, you're always going to be friends. So.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's good when people move on, because I think that there's an opportunity to continue to build your network. Now you have people in other places that you didn't have access to. And when you have these connections, you don't have to be in touch all the time, because you know that you have been like your true self all the time. So the connection or the reconnection is easier.
I agree. And then you see the growth too, because you don't see each other on a daily basis. You're like, wow, you got so much more self-awareness. What happened in the last 3 years?
Right. It's not like being with my kids every single day than in watching pictures or just like looking at pictures like, oh, they've grown so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, appreciate your time, Josue. We'll let you go. We'll talk again. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Sha. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you are a conscious leader in tech, sales, and beyond, check out my free Soul Scientist community at shaharli.com/community. Sign up if you resonate with the message. And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe and share the show with your colleagues and friends. I'll see you next week.